Hello, everybody. Welcome back to my sleep mechanics and game strategy discussion series. In this episode, I got a lot of stuff to talk about. A lot of stuff that I've been doing research on. A lot of stuff that I haven't really seen talked too much about the math and mechanics behind in the community. And I feel like this is almost a little bit groundbreaking. Like I've stumbled upon something almost kind of new. Uh, if somebody else has talked about this stuff in the past and uh, that is something that has been discussed and you already knew all this stuff, that's awesome. But I just recently discovered all this stuff for myself, running through my own numbers and calculations and stuff, which is crazy. Now, this entire point of this video, it all is just question led to question led to question in my thought process and my research. And it all started with that first question, which is a question that I've had for a very long time, which is, we've all I've stated before about the theory behind why Dream Shard Magnet is a flawed skill. That pretty much boils down to the Dream Shard Magnet Pokemon is contributing value to the team through its skill. But it's not actually contributing value to Snorlax's strength, it is instead just giving you Dream Shards. The thing is, if it was contributing to Snorlax's strength through a skill that actually gave Snorlax strength, or if it was contributing to Snorlax strength through producing berries, like a berry specialist, then it could theoretically produce more Dream Shards, or maybe not more, but a comparable amount of Dream Shards through the Snorlax sleeping mechanics to output Dream Shards already. So there's an opportunity cost. Yes, you're getting more Dream Shards, but you're losing on Dream Shards through sleep research. So what is the ultimate? Do they overcome that opportunity cost has always kind of been the question. And the math in this has always been kind of shaky to do because there's a lot of factors going into it, and that's where I spent way more time on this than I thought I ever would, because answering that question is just very difficult. Now, that question led to the secondary question of, in order to answer it, I then needed to answer the question of how do I evaluate Snorlax strength for producing Dream Shards, and can I accurately make a prediction of how many Dream Shards I will get out of that Pokemon's contribution to the team overall, for Dream Shard production? And it's a very important question to answer, to actually weigh the differences between Dream Shard Magnet and Dream skill-based approaches and strength-based approaches. It's going to be kind of how I define them. Strength-based approach focuses more on producing Snorlax strength to increase rarity of spawns, to increase Dream Shard production through the sleeping mechanics. Skill-based approach means that it's just worried about proccing the main skill, getting direct value from that. And in order to effectively evaluate how much the strength-based approach produces, we need to understand just how much a single bit of Snorlax strength contributes to the value of the Dream Shards that you get for a week. And this is an incredibly complicated question to answer. Before this point, before a pretty big development that happened lately with the Rain on X team, this question was honestly pretty unanswerable. I had seen some attempts to answer this on the subreddit. One in particular said that it was 100 Snorlax strength contributed is 4 Dream Shards. But these estimates were always kind of based on personal data and experimental data where thousands of factors could theoretically be at play. But just a few days ago, the genius devs over on the Rain on X team put out a new tool that predicts Dream Shard output, candy, and Research XP output based on Snorlax strength. And finally, it became possible to actually extract this data and put it to the test to try and get a rough estimate of how much a single bit of Snorlax strength contributed to Dream Shard production. And that excited me because I was like, oh my gosh, this is something awesome. Unfortunately, this is a premium pass feature, so if you want to mess around with any of these numbers yourself or answer some of your own questions regarding this topic and delve deeper into the topics that I'm going to talk about here, then you will have to pay for the premium pass with the Rain on X team. But if you are as into the min-maxing the game as I am, I would highly recommend it. It's a very well... They offer a lot of tools, a lot of useful things you'll never find at other site that has so many features for the game and min-maxing the game. None of this video would have really even been possible without this tool, because it's kind of the baseline where I got all the numbers to crunch for this video. So I just had to give them that shout out. And if you're not using Rain on X overall, then oh well. But it's a good website, good team of devs. They're very supportive of the community. It's a fan-made website. It's great. Now, that question that sprouted from my initial question does turn out to be the actual real primary focus and interesting portion of this video that I think, because while I thought that the answer would be a rather simple question of just like, run some numbers, everything kind of the same, I thought it would just give me a like simple logarithmic curve, say, that would give me then just, boom, this is a rough estimate you can use. This much dream shards means, like, this much Snorlax strength means this much dream shards. Boom. It turned out to be considerably more complicated than I ever could have imagined. Which led to me doing hours and hours of research. Now, before I get into the nitty-gritty maths that I did behind this and to reach the conclusions that I did, I will be summarizing them in a conclusion near the end of the video, and I will put a time card for that in the description, so that hopefully if I work with the YouTube UI correctly, then you can just skip straight to it if you don't want to see all the charts and data and graphs. If you're not into that stuff, I get it. It probably wouldn't be the most exciting video for you. And then you can just skip to the part of the video where I talk about how you can actually apply it, the concepts that I figured out to your game. So that'll be in the description for you to click. Additionally, I do have to disclaim that this video, these simulations that I used for the data, were done as of version 2.2.2. It is highly likely that as more Pokemon are added to this game, all of the data could wildly change as more Pokemon spawn potentials. Just introducing a single Pokemon can completely change the available pool at an island, making that island's Dream Shard potential and Research XP output considerably change. Additionally, all the simulations in the Rain on X calculator were crazily taxing on my computer down here. And I did have further questions that I wanted to be answered, but in order to answer those questions, I would have had to run simulations that my computer just wasn't capable of running for a reasonable amount of time. Like, I was trying to run one for Greengrass when I was doing my initial comprehension, and it took hours. Like, it was saying it was like an hour and a half projected for just Greengrass Island, and I wanted to... And after I delved more into it, I realized that I'd have to make charts for every single island, and it would just take way longer than I needed to do. The settings that I used in the calculator were, I assumed a 100% sleep score every single night, and depending on which portion of my data we're talking about, I either took simulations that went for 100,000 or 500,000 intervals of measuring Snorlax's Snorlax's strength for simulating the Dream Shard and Sleep XP output. In other words, to get the data faster, a little bit faster, I sacrificed some potential precision, and also I only went up to 5 million Snorlax strength for potential, like, simulation data. I also sacrificed the extreme end of potential of what you can reach in this game to talk about more of the realistic stuff below that point, rather than making this take way longer to make. But this was all kind of really based on estimates, but they are reasonable estimates that didn't come out of nowhere. They did come out of actual simulations in the Rain on X tool. If you don't match that mold of getting a single 100% sleep score every single night, or if you ever exceed the 5 million Snorlax strength, then the data found in this video may not necessarily apply to you, but split sleep session calculations in that's where my computer really was struggling and was pushing that more than an hour point for making a single chart. So unless I have a lot of free time anytime soon, and this topic gets a lot of attention, and you guys really ask me for in the comments for a part 2 that delves into split sleep sessions, because that could probably be an entire video on its own. I probably won't ever touch on that math or ever make those graphs, because that's just insane on my computer. Super taxing. Now, for this video, events were not taken into account for any of the math. While some of the concepts may carry over during event weeks, the modified spawn chances during events could potentially alter these charts. So only consider what I'm talking about here for the case of non-event weeks. As far as Dream Shard farming goes during event weeks, I'd say think about whatever the event is, and that's basically what my advice is there. Whatever the event is going to have different impacts, and I guess maybe consider how that's going to do, and run the calculations if you have the premium pass for Rain on X, but I know that's a very small minority of people that play the game, so that's my advice there. This is also a relatively new tool that was made by the Rain on X team. They officially announced it just 3 days before I finished up the calculation portion of the data processing. It may still be somewhat in development. I'm not sure what happens on the devs end, and narrowing it down to data points that only 100,000 per data point or 500,000 per data point, it may have a level of inaccuracy. So take it kind of with a grain of salt, but I will touch on some inaccuracy error as well in the video. Additionally, many of the rare sleep styles in the game, as of the time of making this video, still have undisputed, still have disputed drowsy power requirements, which drowsy power requirement is a very important number for determining Pokemon spawn potential. While they all have estimates, they are based on very limited data due to the very, very slow nature of this game. So, given that, for the extreme end of Dream Shard farming potential, numbers could be off. I'm still going to be operating on the idea that these are true because I still think these concepts likely apply. It just may change the charts somewhat, particularly with Old Gold Power Plant. I'm going to make a lot of claims about Old Gold Power Plant that if just a few numbers are just like a little bit different than the predictions here, then it could change the results. But I have compared them to experimental data from my own account to the theoretical data from this calculator, and I will get more into that eventually. This is, like I said, it's gonna be a long video, but it's not unreasonable per se. And finally, the last thing I'm gonna say in this like huge disclaimer portion of the video is that this multiple nights of my time went in to this video to get the research done. So I usually don't care that much about likes. I usually don't care that much about views. I'm just doing this kind of as a hobby, but this one really was a passion project for me that took multiple nights, many hours of work. And if you end up enjoying the talk, I do ask that you stay, watch the whole thing, leave a like, and subscribe to the channel. And share it to anyone that you think could use any of this information, because I think it is very, very intriguing to fans of the game. So, let's actually get into the discussions around this game, and that is talking about drowsy power. Now, first thing we're going to look at, chart. Now you guys can probably see why this took me hours and hours of time. I had to hand punch in all these numbers in here. I copied them from the Rain on X site for my simulations because there isn't an easy way to just like copy, chart, paste in. I hand typed all these numbers, all these data points. But yeah. So first thing I did was make this chart of what I should expect the average expected dream shards per sleeper on Greengrass, because I thought that would kind of be a decent baseline, assuming different Snorlax strengths and assuming that 100% sleep score. And I got this relatively normal looking graph right here. It's almost exactly what you'd expect. It's kind of just a basic logarithmic curve. It does have a few divots here and there, but that's primarily just assumed to be... That can be very easily written off as it's such a small difference that it doesn't really make a noticeable difference in anything. And it's probably just a simple result of the tiers of like the Master 5, Master 6, unlocking different sleep styles. It's going to result in little variations like that. But overall, it's generally what we would expect. But I was like, this is, it's the lowest tier island. How does it compare to the highest tier island of Old Gold Power Plant? Went to the other extreme just because if they're the same at the extremes, it's probably going to be the same kind of all between them. Also, for this first thing, I ran for balanced sleep. All of this is for balanced sleep. That's very important. And that's where I got this chart then, which, as you can see, ends up with a ridiculously higher maximum potential than what we got at the at Greengrass Island, and an overall different shape even. So I was like, okay, I can't run with the assumption that everything's just going to be the same across every island. I thought that was going to be the case and we were going to get a nice number, but that turns out to be far, far from the truth. So then I decided, you know what, I'm going to run calculations for every single island. Which is why I did all this. Now this is the chart that has the 100,000 of separation instead of the 500,000 of separation. And I got basic charts for every single island, and I noticed some odd quirks. Firstly, Snowdrop and Greengrass are notably, by this first preliminary analysis, they're both horrendous at producing dream shards. This makes kind of sense for Greengrass being an early game island, but it kind of confused me with Snowdrop. And then, like, Top and Cyan appear to be kind of middle of the road, producing a decent amount, but not, like, significantly more than the other two. Like, pretty much on par with each other. But they all kind of follow this general logarithmic curve, like you kind of would expect. The whole concept of diminishing returns at higher Snorlax strength. That shouldn't be a surprising concept to anyone who has thought about how Dream Shards are produced in this game when it comes to strength-based mechanics. But then, these two on the end, the two latest islands, really break the mold of what we'd expect. In Old Gold Power Plant, it just kind of seems to go up linearly, almost, which really made no sense to me. Until it just takes a little dip around 3.5 million, where it drops off a little bit and then just kind of flatlines, maybe curves a little bit. And Lapis is even more bizarre, following what looks to be a generally kind of logarithmic line for some time. It's got some weird divots here and there, but that can be roughly attributed to like small differences between like Great 5, Ultra 1 in what can spawn. I would kind of expect to see a little bit of variation. In fact, seeing these curves being so perfect, I was kind of surprised how perfect these ones were. I was expecting a little bit more of like this shenanigans happening. But then at 3.2 million Snorlax strength, we just see a huge spike. And then it just continues on with that logarithmic curve again. Now, I had to ask what is the cause for these odd behaviors at Lapis and Old Gold Power Plant, and it primarily has to do with certain sleep styles. Now, to address the linear nature of Old Gold Power Plant by default, my current theory is that this isn't linear, and it just looks linear because it would go off the chart kind of, but there's a dip here, so like if you were to reconnect this, you'd actually see that it's kind of a logarithmic curve, and it would just continue off the chart with the logarithmic curve. So the linear thing is kind of a moot point, but it's still interesting to address. But as for the dips, it has to do with the fact that we're crossing those boundaries. In Old Gold Power Plant's case here, we're crossing the boundary of Master 14, which is important because that's where we unlock 3-star Vikavolt as a potential spawn. And that is the only spawn that gets unlocked at Master 14. So that has to be, that's the only thing that differs between here and here, other than theoretically you could get rarer styles, which should only benefit you. The only thing that could drop back is the existence of 3-star Vikavolt. And as for the massive jump in expected output on Lapis Lakeside, it is for a very similar reason. That's when you cross the bounds of Master 16, which is when 3-star Dragonite becomes possible to see. So effectively what we're seeing here is 3-star Vikavolt must be a relatively inefficient sleep style at producing Dream Shards for how much drowsy power it consumes. And the opposite is true for 3-star Dragonite. It is very efficient at producing Dream Shards for how much drowsy power it consumes. Therefore making Lapis a better island late game on balanced sleep. Because as you can see here, Old Gold Power Plant ends out just below about 35,000 if you continue all the way to 5 million. And Lapis Lakeside just continues going up in that logarithmic curve. At this point, my brain kind of jumped around because then I was like, well, you know, if 3-star Dragonite is the reason for a spike at Lapis, then what if we compared to Lapis when... Well, what is it going to look like averaged across all weeks at Lapis? Because 3-star Dragonite is only going to be possible to see on balanced sleep, like this simulation, and on dozing sleep. And the same is true for Old Gold Power Plant. What am I going to see on sleep? Is this curve going to be even higher on Old Gold Power Plant charts where I don't have 3-star Vikavolt accessible? And then can any of those concepts be applied to the other islands? So that's when I really started making more and more charts. Now, for the rest of the simulations here, I didn't do 100,000 steps. I did 500,000 steps just to save myself time, save my computer time. But I simulated for every island in their own chart each balanced sleep, slumbering sleep, snoozing sleep, dozing sleep, and the average across. If you average all 4 of them together, and then since I find that balanced sleep tends to be a bit rarer of a sleep style, and kind of a weird sleep style and how it functions, I also averaged it without balanced sleep being included in that calculation as well, because I think that's more accurate to how the game actually plays. When it comes to Greengrass, balanced sleep is clearly the worst. And this is a trend that you'll notice on about half the islands. It didn't make much sense to me. Feels kind of nonsensical. You would think that it would just be the average for the pool of mobs that are available. I mean, your instinct would lead you to believe that it should just be roughly an average of the 3. As you can see, this clearly isn't the case. Like I said, it ends out lower, flatlining lower than where the other 3 sleep styles all flatline out at. So, I'm not really sure exactly what's going on there. I do have some speculation as to why this may be. I don't have any, proof behind this, so don't take this part as fact. My personal speculation on why this may be is that it's trying to spawn, a little bit of each sleep style almost, therefore splitting the drowsy power 3 separate ways, which means no specific sleep style can spawn anything above a certain rarity, or it's rarer for them to spawn above a certain rarity, meaning you're just going to get less Dream Shards because you're encountering a bunch of mid evolutions, a bunch of mid rarity sleep styles instead of any one really big one, which is where most of the Dream Shards come from. There are some problems with this theory because you'd expect that to be the case at all islands if this is the case, which you'll see pretty soon isn't. Then Slumbering consistently gives the most Dream Shards over the other 2 styles at Greengrass. Dozing is second, and Snoozing coming in third. All the grass pretty much just follow that same trend of being a basic logarithmic curve, but as you can see, they're all ending out fairly low, around 20,000, or 21,000 is roughly where they all... 22,000 is actually where I put for them flatlining in balanced Dream Shard output. Thinking about which sleep style outputs the most amount of Dream Shards, though, isn't that useful of information, but I do want to touch on it. Some players do like to force what their sleep style is for certain benefits. If anyone knows or has any other theories as to why only half the islands have balanced sleep as the worst sleep style for Dream Shard production, please leave it down in the comments. I'd love to hear about it, and I just love to hear theories and theory craft and try to explain this, because I think if we can explain more of how the game works, it can help us to maximize the way the game works. But that's just not sustainable, because eventually your 99% slumbering sleep will still get 1% of snoozing, and then it'll become a snoozing session because you got more than average. So you never know. It's not sustainable to try and force, and I think that averaging them across these 3 is the most accurate way to predict the Dream Shard output of any particular island. There are some strategies you could employ with this information to theoretically get more. Like, you could go to one island that's better with one sleep style for 1 week, force that sleep style for a full week. Go to another island that's better with another sleep style and force that sleep style for a week, if you're getting into the forcing sleep style strategies. But overall, didn't really account for that in the duration of this study, and I just averaged the 3 charts together, and most of my research is based around this chart that comes on the end for each island. Now, when we get to Siam Beach, you can see that one pretty big difference here is that the balanced sleep is better off here compared to most of the other sleeps. It's worse than the slumbering still. All of the charts do better. Snoozing at Cyan is pretty terrible. Snoozing at Cyan is better or about the same as slumbering on Greengrass. So the worst sleep style at Cyan is better or about the same as the best sleep style at Greengrass. So Cyan is just strictly better for finding dream shards and sleep XP. Pretty much everything else is kind of the same, mostly logarithmic. Pretty much exactly what we expect. And the averages, whereas on Greengrass it averaged out kind of at like 22 as being the flat line, 21,000, 22,000. Cyan flatline's more around 32, 33,000, so much like almost 1/3 or half, 1.5 times the potential of Dream Shard output from Cyan Beach. Now, top is pretty much just the inverse of Cyan. If I flip back and forth between these two, you can see that the averages kind of stay roughly the same. But if you look at the individual sleep styles, it's the complete opposite case. Because at Cyan, we had bad dozing, bad snoozing, good slumbering. At top, we have mediocre snoozing, mediocre dozing, and comparatively bad slumbering. And balanced is like roughly the same at top as well. So I find that interesting that they're kind of reverse counterparts to each other, especially since top is kind of thought of like the fireplace, since it's where the fireberry specialists shine, and Cyan is the water place. Once again, they have water favored berry, and also it is a beach. So I find it interesting that these are kind of just like the sleep styles that are best at Cyan for Dream Shard output are the ones that are worst at top, and vice versa. But then also, unfortunately, dozing is the best at top. Like, I don't know why it's so good in terms of Dream Shard output. My theory is Tyranitar pseudo-legendaries are pretty great, which I do want to talk a little bit about Tyranitar. So I made the comparison to Dragonite earlier, being so impactful. I found that the rarity of Tyranitar is actually a little bit decreased from what Dragonite is, despite Dragonite being also a pseudo. Like, they're both pseudos, but they made Tyranitar's styles actually less rare than Dragonite, and because of that, they also gave it less output on Dream Shards and Sleep XP. So it doesn't spike it as much as with the Lapis one you'll see pretty soon. Overall, flatlines at about 32, 33,000, which is, like I said, basically the same as Cyan. I would consider these very comparable in how much you get in terms of Dream Shard output. Now, Snowdrop. I feel bad about this because Snowdrop is just terrible. I was kind of hoping that if there was a difference between islands, that Snowdrop would at least have a niche in Dream Shard finding. It turns out to be quite the opposite. In fact, if we compare it to Greengrass, it's not that much better. You can see it is slightly better, I will give it that. But we're talking about comparing it to the base island for how many Dream Shards you get comparatively. Compared to Snowdrop Island, an island that used to be the highest tier island in the game. So, if you go to Snowdrop Tundra, basically something that is said here, do not try to have balanced sleep is one very big thing. I bet having your sleep be consistent is probably a good thing. I don't know. I don't read the sleep tips. I don't know if balanced sleep is actually good for your health or not. But if you want to do well in this game, that good sleep, the balanced sleep, is a sacrifice you want to make while at Snowdrop, because it is just horrendous. I know it's not really controllable what sleep style you get for the most part, but it's just a bizarre thing to notice. The curve for the overall averages across all three, which honestly all three are kind of the same in output. if you see here, they're all just kind of low. And they all kind of average to about 23,000 is where they kind of flatline out. So that's like the highest potential. That is about 1,000 more than where Greengrass ends. But when we're talking about 1,000 in jump from Snowdrop to Greengrass, and about a 9,000 jump from Snowdrop to Top or to Cyan, it's not even comparable. Snowdrop is just bad for this purpose. Now, Lapis is a very interesting one since, like I discussed, we have that whole 3-star Dragonite effect going on. Making the balance sleep significantly better, making the dozing sleep significantly better. But overall, snoozing and slumbering are, like, comparable to some of the Snowdrop charts. Like, especially if you look at here at, like, the slumbering, when I swap between them, it doesn't look all that much different. The snoozing is a little bit better, but not terrible. It's just the dozing and the balance sleep really carry it. Which is interesting because unless you're hunting the Gardevoir still, dozing sleep is probably the best for spawns at Lapis as well. Since the most significant in the meta mon that is there, I feel like, is the Dragonite line, as well as the Meganium line. Both are there in dozing. Overall, if you're at Lapis, you just want to be getting dozing for both Dream Shards and for what candies you want, and for like what Pokemon to catch. Unless you're hunting the Gardevoir, then go snoozing all the way. Sorry, beware. Slumbering, just not it for Dream Shard output. I think of it as kind of like the Gambler's Island when we talk about Lapis, because realistically these curves come from averaging everything, and the average takes into account the outliers. And in this case, the reason why dozing and balance do so well is because of Dragonite's existence. Well, if you don't see a Dragonite, if you don't get lucky enough to get a Dragonite, then it's probably worse than snoozing overall. So it's like, if you hit big, it's the best island. If you don't hit big, it's the worst. Well, not the worst, that's still Snowdrop, but it's one of the worst. Overall, it averages together to flatline out around 31 to 32k at those higher Snorlax strengths. Now, Old Gold Power Plant, before I get into it, is a very interesting case, because as you can see, all these charts, I started off when I did this, when I made them only go up to 45,000, because that's kind of the bounds that I kept them within. But then I very quickly switched over to going to 60,000 expected output per night on these, and I had to do that for exclusively Old Gold Power Plant. No other island in the game did I get near these amounts. Now, Balance Sleep is the worst of the three, despite it performing the second best of all islands in Balance Sleep, so it's the worst sleep style at this island. Yet, even if we make a comparison of all of the balanced sleeps, it's the second best balanced sleep. So, that really does say something about how many Dream Shards this thing produces. Now, this may, since it is the newest island, it may be the most subject to the disputed DPR effect that I mentioned earlier, since it does have the most new amount of Pokemon. However, if this data is accurate, then OGPP is just definitely where all long-term Snorlax strength-based Dream Shard farming should definitely occur. Dozing at Lapis is best compared to all the other ones in the game. None of them actually compare because of the whole Dragonite effect. Well, with the exception of Balance Sleep, every single other one of these ends at a higher or much higher rate of Dream Shard production than Lapis dozing. So, Old Gold Power Plant is just in a tier of its own, way above the rest, and as you can see, I can't even accurately tell you where the average flatlines, because this curve, it's a pretty typical curve that you'd expect to see. This curve doesn't even flatline within the range that I projected to, which was 5 million Snorlax strength. So it theoretically has potential to go up a little more. It's starting to flatline on this chart, but I would expect it to still go on and gain a decent amount before like properly flatlining. Interestingly, we see that the 3-star Vikavolt dip only really occurs on Balance Sleep. For some reason, it doesn't have the same impact on dozing. I'm not so sure why that is, and it definitely does play against my theories from earlier. Once again, I can't answer every question that I had, otherwise this video would be hours and hours long. Now, as we can see from these charts, the balanced sleep style is definitely the worst of the styles. But then slumbering's next, followed by snoozing, and dozing actually being the best. But even though slumbering is the worst sleep style here, it's still better than every other sleep style at every other island. Similar to the Siam Beach compared to Greengrass comparison. Now, the natural next step of this was to figure out averages. Like, what are the equations for each of these charts? If I want to find the equation for these yellow lines, then what would I get? Now, they all look relatively logarithmic if I'm to, like, just guesstimate based off what I'm seeing and what makes the most logical sense. I found that if I applied logarithmic equations, then none of them really matched up all that well. And I got a much better match using a polynomial. It doesn't really matter all that much, but basically what that means is that I gave up being able to project for beyond 5 million accurately to get more accuracy within the bounds of this, because it actually matched the line better for the bounds of this research. I made projections and equations for every single one of these yellow lines, which is the sum of dream shards found and research XP found, and made projections for every single island and put them all into one chart. And as you can see, what I was talking about earlier, Greengrass and Snowdrop kind of clumped together way down here. The middle three kind of end up here, and the OGPP just really shoots off. But we finally have an equation. We finally have equations here for how much Snorlax strength equates to dream shards produced. After all this work and all these things considered, I finally have a model that I can use. It's far from a perfect model, but it's something that I can use to at least make the comparison to Dream Shard Magnet Pokemon. I opted to make the comparison at Old Gold Power Plant, because I figured it's going to... I figured that Dream Shard Magnet Pokemon are going to do better. I went into this with that assumption, just because it only makes most logical sense. Why would the devs allow this skill to be so weak? They've buffed it in the past before. So I figured if I want to make a comparison, to give the berry specialist, to give the strength-based farming approach as much of a shot, I would have to use the best possible island for it, which in this case is hands down Old Gold Power Plant. No doubt, no question about it. In order to actually make this comparison, we need to actually figure out how a Pokemon's production contributes over the course of a whole week. Because let's say a Pokemon can produce 1 million Snorlax strength, or a team produces 1 million Snorlax strength on Monday. Well, then you're getting the value of that 1 million from on Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday. Even if you run no Pokemon the rest of the week, the Pokemon on day one contributed in Dream Shard production that many Dream Shards over the course of 7 nights. And theoretically, if we ran teams, they could increase it more. But that initial was created by the original team. So this brings into the question of, what if we include a berry specialist for just Monday morning? What if we include a very strong specialist just on Monday morning, and then put in Dream Shard Magnet Pokemon for the rest of the week? How does it compare comparatively? And because of the way this is logarithmic, or the way it curves off, naturally a berry specialist that is introduced at the beginning of the week is going to produce more throughout, and only in the beginning of the week is going to produce more Dream Shards overall by having less time on the team, especially since that means that their productivity is being multiplied out across 7 nights of production, instead of just being used. Let's say you only threw it in on Sunday night or Sunday morning, you would only get the value of it for 1 night. So I needed to try and use these equations to estimate how many Dream Shards they're actually contributing to the team based off when they're put on the team during the week. Basically, I made a lot of charts. I'm not going to be going over the math of how these charts work as much, because really, you just need to understand what these charts are showing. And basically, I simulated, if I take it off the team, then it flatlines in how much it's producing per day. to then figure out how much if I started. So this chart, if I start Monday morning and I run it for the entire rest of the week, how much value does that mod contribute per day on average to my Dream Shard production? Now, here's where you can see some of the flaws in the equations that I used. I have some negative numbers here. Basically, you can probably just ignore this chart up until like maybe like 80,000 in production. I'd say past the point of negative numbers is where it starts to actually be a useful prediction, but negative numbers break it kind of, and that's just a quirk of the equation that I used, and I recognize that flaw, but it's better for higher numbers. But basically, I use the data to project that if I start on Monday, then how much value in Dream Shards do I get per day from that Pokemon? And if I started using it on Thursday morning, how much would I get from that Pokemon? So as you can see, the numbers get less and less across each day. And I did the same thing, but I did the inverse of if I took it off the team on Monday morning, but I was running it Monday morning, or if I took it off the team on Monday night, but I was running it Monday morning through Tuesday, Monday morning through Wednesday, then how much is it contributing to the team? And as you can see, it curves off as the week goes on because leaving it on the team for longer means that its contributions are going to be used less across the week. But starting later as well also has the same effect. I finally was able to use this chart, combining with the starting Monday morning, comparing to the starting or ending Monday morning value versus starting Monday mornings. These are really the numbers that I used. Then I just took copy and paste the numbers of standard rarity Pokemon. Now I do have to get into what I mean by those standards. It's very important to produce a baseline for estimates. Now I use RainOnX for this, the production comparison tool, and I used 3 Pokemon that I already have that I think are relatively decent standards for Pokemon production in this game, and compared to what I think equal rarity Swalots are. This first Swalot is like this first comparison is what I consider to be like a mid option of one that you'd hunt for, like, and you'd invest in it because you need a berry specialist, but maybe you don't think of it as necessarily your long-term investment. As you can see, this one's missing Berry Fighting S. But I compared it to the Swalot that I think would have a similar stat spread. I put in like a decent amount of sub skills in nature for skill triggers to make the comparison. And then I included the comparison down here. I did the same for what I consider to be the gold standard. So if this is like the silver standard, then this is like the gold standard of like Berry Fighting S, Help Bonus, Help Speed M. This is a Pokemon that I do in fact have on my account, and I compared it to the gold standard Swalot. The final one, which I think is like the baseline. So the bronze standard. Now the reason why I used my Typhlosion is because it doesn't have Fairy Berry. I feel like everyone by the time they get to Old Gold Power Plant is going to have, yes, this one's a really, really good Typhlosion, but I feel like everyone's going to have at least one Pokemon that's kind of looks like this, where it's their one berry specialist, or maybe it'll be an Ampharos, maybe it'll be an Espeon, that can contribute roughly this much strength. I use this one because it's my best example of, it's a Berry Finder that Berry Finders really do best at their island, but you take them out of their island, and you can still use them. They still can be pretty strong. And I feel like everyone kind of would have this, but everyone by the time they get there, if they're really hunting the Dream Shard Magnet Pokemon, they could have a Swalot by that time with just Skill Trigger M. Nothing else is kind of my thought line with this. So this is my last comparison for the Bronze Standard. And I compared it all different values. I also did account for the Swalot itself, its boost for strength. Now, I do want to get into this -5% and this +40%, so that is my confidence interval, or like my adjusting for experiments. If I go back to my first slide, or my first spreadsheet, I included this little bit of data over here. I went back and I looked at all 9 of the sleep sessions that I got ever since Old Gold Power Plant's release. As long as it got a 100% score, balanced sleep, and wasn't during an event, then I took that sleep style and I put it in, found how many Dream Shards and sleep XP that I got from it, and then compared it to what this chart, particularly this column, had for its expected output value, and then found a percent difference. Now, I did round up in every case, so like this one was really, really off in the negative direction. I think that's primarily because, if I'm remembering correctly, it was like 800. It was like 825, 800 like 5,000 Snorlax strength for the night. So I just rounded up to whatever the next one was, which was like, I was like almost a whole 100,000 off in terms of Snorlax strength. So that's kind of why this one's significantly lower. So I kind of just excluded it as an outlier in the fact that I was using a roundup function for it. But these are the other ones. And looking at this, I consistently got way higher than what the calculator predicted. Now, this may be due to a multitude of factors, but I noticed that it never went beyond 35.76% in my experimental data, and did go down to as low as minus 1.89%. I figured to give them both a shot. I would do minus 5%. Just look at what the range is from minus 5% to plus 40%, just to make that comparison, and give them both the benefit of the doubt and kind of see how they compare to each other when taking into account this possible experimental difference for error in the calculator, or error in my hand typing, or in whatever, really. I included the plus 40%. Now, that's primarily the number that I went off of, because when I did the minus 5%, basically, simply put, Dream Shard Magnet Pokemon always do better. I gave them the benefit of the doubt almost every single time, did a ton of math to prove it, and I proved that definitively in the current format of the game, Dream Shard Magnet is pretty much always better for Dream Shard production exclusively. Now, you can see here, I used this 146,000 for the gold standard. I added on to the Swalot the numbers that we see down here for running a whole week. And when I do that, added with the Swalot's production, it came to about 17,801, after accounting for the 40% difference as well. And if I run it the whole week, it's like the Raichu produces like half the amount of Dream Shards. And that's, like I said, the gold standard for Raichu. It's like half. So it is significantly worse to try and rely exclusively on sleep-related or strength-related Dream Shard production. That doesn't mean it's useless, though, and that you should go investing in a Dream Shard Magnet Pokemon. Just that for Dream Shards alone, it is technically better. And this was the closest where the comparison got. Now, if you did run it on Monday alone, if we assumed that 40% difference, which is a very generous difference, then it did come out slightly better than the Swalot. You could argue it's just comparable, but if we get close to the actual data, you can see that, or the actual simulations, it's way off. As far as the mid-tier ones, and every single other one gets further and further away, even running for just Monday morning, which is the best possible situation for the Raichus. And something to say, these charts also do have an innate flaw in them, given that they, I could get into the math behind it. If you're interested in seeing what I did to do this simulation, I'll put a link to this spreadsheet in the description of the video. So, this is like giving them every possible benefit of the doubt. Using the best island, the maximum island percent bonus, favored berry, pretty much everything you can imagine. And they're still coming out to produce less Dream Shards than the Dream Shard Magnet Pokemon. Conclusions. If you intend to do long-term Dream Shard farming, the best way to go about it with the current state of the game is to use a Dream Shard Magnet Pokemon, but the differences may be so minimal that it is likely not worth the extra investment. Sure, they don't really seem that minimal of differences when you look at the math that I did here, but in reality, do you really need those extra Dream Shards, especially when considered across the course of multiple weeks? As far as the actual difference between the Snorlax strength and the Dream Shard approach goes, a skills-based approach may always be better, but I still generally would not recommend it, because it is so much extra investment for just extra Dream Shards. And this data already didn't account for things like subskills and events that boost Dream Shard games, which, when taking those into account, the strength-based approach will definitely perform even better than I displayed here. I still don't think it would bring it up to the same level, but it's something else to be considering. And theoretically, if you ran Luck Incense every single night, then that would literally double their output. Now, only a whale could do that. Nobody's running Luck Incense that often, but it's another consideration. Additionally, the strength-based approach will always provide more candy and more research rank if you're below the point where that research XP is being converted into Dream Shards. Granted, if you need Dream Shards in those earlier levels, then the skill is going to be the better way to go about it. But you need research rank to do important things in the game. You should be going for the research XP first before Dream Shards. Dream Shards should be the secondary. So that's honestly something that plays more in favor to the research-based XP approach, or Dream Shard approach, rather than the skill-based approach. Additionally, higher drowsy power also assists in unlocking new sleep styles in the game, which a skill-based approach does nothing to help with, and that is another pivotal factor in progression of the game, to unlock new islands, reach higher highs. And the strength-based approach of farming is also cheaper, since a person who's trying to do skill-based Dream Shard farming will still need to invest in strong Pokemon as well as their Dream Shard farmer, because high strength is another goal that's in the game that everyone's going to kind of want to eventually be reaching. And really the goal of collecting Dream Shards is to level your Pokemon faster so that they can reach those higher highs in Snorlax strength. So the main core of the game is Snorlax strength. So investing in the Dream Shard Magnet Pokemon to level those ones better isn't necessarily the best approach if you could just take the amount that you're putting into the Dream Shard Pokemon and instead put that into your strong Pokemon to begin with. So there are all lots of things to consider. It's all about opportunity cost. If Dream Shard Magnet doesn't get any kind of rebalancing, then the issues for it are just going to be getting worse as time goes on. As we get higher Pokemon levels and higher meals, the skill will very minimally increase in the amount of procs per day. Like, so small that we're not going to really see a noticeable difference. But we're going to see significant increase to Pokemon level, like berry gains and ingredient gains over time. We'll likely see stronger meals, who knows. And as time goes on, we're going to be able to get more Snorlax strength. Now, granted, we'll hit those flatline issues a bit sooner, but it only makes the chart, it'll only make it skew closer to making them comparable. And also with effects like Luck Incense, with effects like the sub-skills that boost Research XP and Dream Shards found overnight. I just think that there's too many ways to gain enough Dream Shards. The concept of enough. There's too many ways to gain enough Dream Shards that you don't necessarily need to justify spending this many skill seeds to get the Dream Shard Magnet Pokemon that actually produces more Dream Shards than your needs. Hey everybody, future me here. I was editing this video, which normally I don't do, but as I was editing, I couldn't help but notice that there's a point that I forgot to mention here, and I just had to bring it up because it is actually something pretty big that I didn't touch on at all, and that was that something that doesn't get considered when thinking about the Dream Shard output of berry specialists or ingredient specialists through leveling Snorlax is that you don't just gain Dream Shards through sleep sessions and research XP. You also gain them through Snorlax rank. Every time you hit Master 1, you get a set number of Dream Shards. You get every single rank up reward, and that actually adds up to be a decent amount, which I didn't even touch on the math for that. If you want to know the math behind that and kind of want me to reevaluate that with all this math that I did beforehand and try to work that into it, then please leave a comment down below, and I'll try to look into that for you to figure it out. Maybe it'll just be a chart in a Discord that I post somewhere. If it does show up, I'll leave a link in the description of the video, but yeah, just had to mention that. There's even more that the Dream Shard Magnet Pokemon aren't producing Dream Shards in, so back to your regularly scheduled me. There's also some questions here of like interesting implications of this research that go outside the bounds of the very, very initial question that I had. And the first one is, if one has invested into a Dream Shard Magnet Pokemon, they actually have islands similar to a berry specialist where they're going to function best. At Snowdrop and Greengrass specifically, if you need a large quantity of dream shards, your only real way of obtaining that is through the skill-based approach to farming. Since they have very little dream shard output on their own and they flatline very early in how much they produce, the decrease in Snorlax strength that you have from running the Dream Shard Magnet Pokemon will make very little impact on the amount of Dream Shards you collect per night. So the gains from this skill are practically pure profit. The whole opportunity cost thing kind of goes out the window. And this leads to one very interesting thought that I kind of had on the side. That kind of, honestly, in the past I've given Sableye and Persian a lot of crap because I think that there's some of the worst, they are like some of the worst Pokemon in the game, some of the worst investments in this game. But one very interesting thing that they actually have about Swalot is now that I've discovered that Snowdrop is kind of the prime candidate for Dream Shard Magnet Pokemon farming, it actually means that Sableye and Persian are almost better in some capacity because they also have Favored Berry at Snowdrop. Now, it's not going to cause Persian to overcome Swalot for sure. I haven't done the math on this. That would take a lot more time on my part, and I really wanted to get this video out, so... and to answer this stupid little side question, it wasn't worth making the massive charts I have to make. But, in theory, Sableye should be a better general Pokemon for Snowdrop than Swalot should be. Even though Swalot's the better Dream Shard Magnet Pokemon overall. But I still think this slight advantage that Sableye has going for it over Swalot is not enough to justify its 16 pip cost, or the extra skill seed of investment, or the overall rarity to catch the dang thing. But it's just an interesting niche to think about. I like that this game is so in-depth that you can even find some use for the worst of the worst Pokemon. I'm still struggling with Wobbuffet, but I finally found something for Persian and Sableye. When it comes to Lapis, Taupe, and Cyan, the skill Dream Shard Magnet is a bit more of a give and take. There is some sacrifice that's being given up in running them over a strong berry specialist or strong ingredient specialist. It's less of a cost than what it is at Old Gold Power Plant, which at Old Gold Power Plant, I personally think you should probably never run a Dream Shard Magnet skill Mon, as opposed to Mon that is just going to give you more Snorlax strength. You want to reach higher levels in Old Gold Power Plant anyway, because it has such an insane curve. So, like, you're meeting more of those, like, master requirements, those ultra requirements. Also, even getting to the point where you can encounter 8 Pokemon requires almost 1 million Snorlax strength. So, you just can't afford any bit of loss at Old Gold Power Plant, and also it's the one that gives you the highest return on your Snorlax strength. So, it's just not worth it there. Some other interesting concepts. The concept of Dream Shard Magnet Pokemon having islands also actually applies to Research XP and Dream Shard bonus subskills, although the effects of the islands that those ones do best at are the inverse. For all the same reasons, but it's just, instead of it detracting from those, it instead is adding to those. Something else to talk about is that which islands these Pokemon do best and worst at. Unlike Berry Specialists, which are very fixed in which islands they do best and worst at, these islands could be relatively fluid over time, as more Pokemon are introduced and change up the spawning chances across the different islands. Now, finally, I do want to talk about a minor complaint that I have in the game. I usually have very, very little to complain about in this game, but it's just something that I have personal opinions on. And that is, I do believe that Snowdrop is an island that just needs more going for it. I think it's a very cute island, somewhere that I want to be wanting to go to, but I find that I never want to go there. And that is just because it is, from a game balance perspective, it is like the worst island in every regard. They just introduced Weavile. Yes, Weavile is great, but Weavile is best at Snowdrop, so you use Weavile to come back to Snowdrop to hunt for Weavile. The only other stuff that it really offers is eggs through Delibird and Snover. It's just to get an egg farmer. But the island needs to actually have some sort of sleep styles that can actually generate a good amount of Dream Shards so the charts don't look so that the charts don't look quite like this. This is bad. This is very bad for the island. It makes sense that Greengrass is so terrible at producing dream shards. It's the first island you go to, first island you have access to. It should naturally be a step up in power when you go to Cyan. It should naturally be maybe the same across all those other islands, or maybe an increase in power at every single one. But the fact that there's a noticeable dip in power from top to Snowdrop just shows that they really need to. I feel like the devs should try to rework something here. Maybe give like a little more dream shards to certain spawns that are Snowdrop exclusive. Maybe give Abomasnow specifically some things. Maybe give some things to Delibird. Maybe Weavile now that that's in play. Or maybe new Pokemon, which is pretty likely with Christmas coming around the corner. Hey y'all, future me again, editing me. Just gotta say, man, past me was so correct here when he said that it was likely that they give it more Pokemon, new Pokemon, because literally the day after I finished recording this, they made this news go live. Alolan Vulpix and Pawmot both going to be at Snowdrop. I'm really, really hoping that it corrects this issue at Snowdrop. Once it is around and the Rain on X team has gathered the Drowsy Power requirement numbers for it and everything like that, I'm gonna redo the simulations for Snowdrop specifically and see if the introduction of these specific sleep styles actually make a difference on the overall Dream Shard output of Snowdrop, and see if it actually fixes some of the problems that we have at Snowdrop. Vulpix specifically could drastically change that, because it is a Snowdrop exclusive, a new Snowdrop exclusive to go alongside the Snowverse. So if it's good, then we got something else to go elsewhere, and that is very exciting. Back to regular me. I can imagine they would want to add something to Snowdrop for Christmas. It's the perfect island for it. Anyway, that has been my full discussion of the topic. There's still lots more that I think can come out of this discussion, and still more even conclusions that can be made from this research that I didn't even think about. If you have any thoughts, please leave them down in the comments. As I said earlier in the video, please leave a like and subscribe if you learned something, if you enjoyed. As always, I thank you guys for watching and hope you have a wonderful day. Bye-bye now.